Welcome back once more to Bear Wiseman's Gathering of Geeks. And that would be me, Bear Wiseman. And today I have with me Miikka Hujanen from Crimson Sun, who, from what I can tell with, all the D&D and whatnot, you've got to at least be a little bit of a geek.
Well, if that's a prosecution, if you're the prosecutor here, I think you have done a good job, and I'll stand accused. And I'll admit the charges, yeah. I'm a little bit of a geek, maybe more than a little bit. Yeah, that was a very complicated answer to a very simple question.
I mean, on that note, one of, the most whimsically fun geek things that I've stumbled across in recent years has been Dungeons and Dragons, like D&D Court, where it's these actual play podcast
Right.
D&D players, and they generally do, long campaigns, but I don't know, whatever reason they have, every other week they do something else nowadays, probably just for time constraints, I would guess.
Right.
But they usually on their off week now do Dungeon Court, and so people write in with their grievances from things from their D&D campaigns, and it's so entertaining because, a lot of the times it's just like, oh, someone's being a dick at the table, but otherwise you get these scenarios where, this one player won't stop bringing full rotisserie chickens to eat during gameplay, and they don't mute their mic on Discord or whatever, things like that. And it's such a weird little thing, but it's so just genuinely entertaining.
I get the entertaining part, yeah. I've spent a lot of time in Reddit browsing different D&D related subreddits, and I think 75% of the posts are people complaining either about their players or about their DMs.
It's almost always, I would say, a player versus the GM. It's very seldomly player versus player that the grievances come up. But there's a lot of just truly maniacal things that people do, and you just kind of have to wonder where they're coming from. I've heard a lot of them where just someone new comes to a table of seasoned players, and then everyone at the table is just awful to them, or the GM has this Bible of world lore that they make the new player read, and if they don't read it all and know everything at the table, there's no room for mercy for these poor players.
Right.
And a lot of the times the verdict is just you need better friends.
Exactly. Well, certainly to be sure, most of the games that I've played with D&D or any other tabletop RPG are probably going so well that people don't see any reason to post to Reddit about it.
Just before we started recording, we were talking about how occasionally I have cats who want in here when they hear people
kitty.
Talking. So, hello, welcome, join us.
That's a magnificent beast. Jump on my lap, kitty cat.
You'll have to nab him when he walks by.
You can see it, but it's a massive kitty cat.
Come here, massive kitty cat. Geeks like cats, don't they?
I did not lie. Hello, kitty cat.
This cat is actually named after the GM from NADPOD, who is the group that do the Dungeon Court. Teddy is named after one of his D&D characters because his breeder name was Haribo, which is like that gummy bear candy or whatever. And the D&D campaign that they were playing was basically Game of Thrones in Candyland. This is not for NADPOD, this is for Dimension 20, which is another actual play thing. But yeah, Game of Thrones in Candyland, absolutely amazing season. I definitely recommend it. It's way better than Game of Thrones.
Sounds pretty good.
And
sweet.
Quite sweet, I would say. And there's a gummy bear like Kingsguard who, the really dedicated loyal knight. He's got these cool moves where he can take damage from the royal family onto himself, cool stuff. And his name was Theobald Gumbar, and he was just like a sentient gummy bear.
Yeah.
So Haribo had to call him Teddy.
Bye, Daddy.
He's just gonna lurk, I guess. But anyways.
Yeah, right.
Instantly derailed by cats.
Yeah, you mentioned these actual play podcast things, and I've just like this year, in May, just finally got into them. I have tried Critical Role at least 4 times before, and it's mostly been like I'll start listening it or watching it from YouTube, and I can stand for 5 minutes, and then I'm like, no.
I've never even tried to get into Critical Role because, for the same reason that I didn't watch One Piece for like 10 years, just it's too much. I feel like I need to just start from the beginning and plug through all of it until it starts to get good. And, like, you can do that when you're like in your teens or your 20s, but when you get older, you don't have quite so much time to dedicate to like hours and hours of playing. Even if Matt Mercer is a great GM, he actually GMs the prequel to Game of Thrones and Candyland, which came after the season, but he did a great job. He's been, I think, on 2 Dimension 20 shows. I think his wife was on... No, he's been on 3, and his wife was on one of them with him. So.
Right, yeah. For me, the problem often is that I think I'm somewhat picky with fantasy and stuff like. For example, I can't stand weird species or character races or stuff like that. So when I've been running D&D and other type of RPGs, the rule one is no furry characters.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think... Well, we played a little bit of Curse of Strahd together, but you're more of a D&D guy than anything else, right?
I would say so, yeah. D&D is the RPG system that I have most experience, especially from my adult life. I started tabletop RPGs pretty young. At the ripe age of 10, I got the Middle Earth role-playing game, The Good Old Merp, as a Christmas present in 2000. And I ran campaign with that and Rollmaster system for quite many years until I was 18 or something. So almost 9 years, something like that.
Is that one of those ones that has those just like incredibly huge stacks of like number charts?
Exactly. It's that. There's a chart for everything.
That terrifies me, honestly, because I'm such a numbers idiot that just looking at those charts, I'm like, I don't know what this is. I have anxiety already.
Yeah, like looking at it now seems like makes you think that isn't this maybe like a little bit excessive? But then again, when I was 10, I had no experience of any other system, so that all felt like supernatural.
Yeah.
And I had all these bookmarks for different charts for different spells and all the things.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
But it was good times.
I think when you're at that age and you just find something that's cool, you just devour it regardless of how much weird shit you have to learn.
Exactly.
I'm actually sorry that I've gotten into TTRPGs so much later in life than like I would like, It was one of those things that I'm like, I have a lot of geek cred. I've tried most geek things, or things that are stereotypically geek anyways.
Right.
But TTRPGs are like just like the last, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years or something for me, which is such a shame, but it's nice because it kind of reinvigorates the creative spirit as well. Like,
it does.
You just get to go be someone else for a while, and I don't know. I always end up steering into like weird aspects of my own personality that I kind of like. Let's say like I'm really high strung or like really angry, and we played some Strahd together, so you got to experience the weird angry side of me that I don't let out in my day-to-day life.
Exactly, yeah.
But I understand you have had your own Strahd campaign now for a while, so now that our campaign doesn't go on anymore, I can actually talk to you about this and have spoilers, and it doesn't matter. So, how is your campaign going?
We have been playing approximately 2 years now. Time flies when you're having fun, and And we started it pretty soon after I played Curse of Strahd with you, since I got hooked up to the whole story and the setting. It was so much cool that I had to run it myself. I started running it by the book, but pretty sure I discovered this person from the internet. They are called Dragnacarda, and they, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, are like one of the Curse of Strahd DMs of the internet. And he has been working on with this thing called Curse of Strahd Reloaded, which is a guide for a DM. It's online, and you can basically run the campaign with it with little to no prep. And most importantly, it aims to rewrite the thing into more cohesive and narratively resonant form.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like the book itself, it has a lot of weaknesses. Like the information is scattered all around, and a lot of characters are just introduced in one sentence, and then nothing else is mentioned of them again. So in this Reloaded thing, all the characters have like resonant story arcs to them and proper development.
Nice.
Stuff like that. And it's also a great community in Discord.
Oh, that's cool.
I've done my little 2 pennies helping making that thing. So my nickname is in the credits.
Oh, nice.
That's the important thing.
Nice humble brag.
Nice humble brag, yeah. And I've also learned a ton of, let's say, DMing theory while being part of this community.
Yeah. I think, like, D&D's got such a cool scene, because even, like, I've played so little actual D&D. I usually play in other systems, but I feel like I know D&D better than any of them, just because there is such a big community for it, and there is, like, so many of these actual plays that, like you said, I'm really picky with any sort of, like, anything really that I ingest these days that's media, just because oversaturation, modern day, and all of that sort of thing. So, like, I've tried, for example, the McElroy family. They do some, but I recommend that more for people who have never played D&D before, because they very much just get started at the basics and they're learning as they're going. So it's a really, like, gentle intro to D&D, but the Dimension 20 stuff, for example, is just really mostly seasoned players, and the GM he's probably about my age, which is, late 30s, and he's been GMing since he was 8, so he's basically like professional voice actor, like professional improv actor, and so he has like the million voices and the million personalities that just make for these deep, rich, wonderful, like, story arcs that are very evocative. Like, one of the most recent seasons that was kind of like made me viscerally upset was junior year of Fantasy High, set in the fantasy high school, kind of 1920s, what, American diner culture, but with fantasy. So great setting off the top, but they really went in this 3rd season deep into how fucked up the American school system is. So they were saying, like, okay, for every, like, kind of chunk of time that you cover in this school year, you're going to be doing roles for, like, popularity, relationships, like, extracurriculars, like, your grades for your individual, like, whatever your D&D classes. If you're taking classes in that, if you're multi-classing, then you have to do your academics multiple times, and just made it into this nightmare of, like, inheriting stress, and then stress was related to the final boss. So it was such a cool look at this sort of, like, really tragic part of American culture, but they made it really, like, exciting and fun in the context of D&D. So you can do some really cool stuff with D&D, but I feel like you also really need to know the system deeply to do it, and you have to homebrew a lot.
That's the impression that I've gotten, but that's also, like, my experience. Like, first you need to know the rules, and then you can start breaking them.
Yeah. And that's cool in its own way, I think, if you like to do that sort of thing. So if you like to have modules and then play with them or whatever, that's your totally, like, D&D, absolutely recommend for sure. But I think, like like our GM doesn't like to homebrew, and he likes to have, like, he likes the Mörkborg, which is like kind of these little tailor-made modules for sessions, and he's got maps, he's got descriptions, and then he gets to add the flavor. Whereas, like, with D&D, there's always, like, the my precious character, and the fact that none of the classes kind of as are very depictive flexibly of characters, so it's usually like you're gonna take like this type of druid or cleric or whatever, but then you might be like pulling a few spells from other aspects, other classes, or making up your own, things like that. But it's so I can see, like, if you like that sort of homebrew thing, then D&D is great, but otherwise I can see why some people prefer like the Pathfinder or the Zweihander that are a little more customizable, like just in the character creation.
Right, yeah. I'm a little bit Pathfinder curious. But yeah, you talked a lot of about prepping and how that's a lot of work, and as it usually is.
Yeah.
And I'm again gonna a little bit advertise this Curse of Strahd Reloaded. It is little to no prep. You just open the website, pick the story arc that you're currently on or gonna play, and just scroll down as you go.
Incredible.
Very incredibly well done and easy.
That's awesome too. If you do like module play, I think, like, some people want to create their own world and their own races and all of that stuff. So, but module play definitely has its place, and as someone who gets like deeply stressed out every time I'm GMing from my Zweihander world, like I go through like several days of just like tense anxiety because I'm making up everything myself, and I'm just like, oh god, did I prepare everything? Do I have enough? And so I can feel that pull to the module.
Well, I'm more like, well, here we are now, let's see what happens type of person with that. I just had a session yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. With my homebrew thing. So I have 2 campaigns going on right now, this Curse of Strahd, and then my homebrew thing that I've been building since, let's say, last December. Still a lot work in progress, but I have done enormously much work with it, and I have like, I don't even know, millions of characters worth of notes. Very neatly organized.
Of course. Do you use any of the D&D lore for your own campaign, or is it all just...
I do, yeah, like, how would I put it? I have started to build the thing from ground up, like, instead of starting to design my own cosmology or something like that. I've been using, like, the, how would I put it? For example, the concept that there are different planes, like the material plane and elemental planes and stuff like that. And for example, that thing like Underdark exists, and like races and or species as they're called in the new player's handbook that was published yesterday.
Oh, is that, what edition would that be?
That's like 5th edition, but they make player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual, like new versions with some a lot of updates. They're like, as far as I have been able to look through them, they're like built again from ground up. A lot of quality of life improvements and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the other things that gets a little dodgy in D&D is that it's actually pretty hard to die. And that's where, again, like, the Mörkborg or Zweihander lovers kind of come in, because those are games where it's very easy to die.
Right.
And, like, I see the pull to both sides, like, there's something to those, like, big, heroic, save the world stories, but I also do like the idea of just, like, don't ever hold back. Like, if it kills you and it's awesome, then that's awesome too.
Right, yeah. That really comes down to the question of what kind of game do you want to play.
For sure.
Of course, the danger of dying creates tension, and tension can create good roleplay.
Yes. And I think that's where our Strahd campaign fell apart, was that I think The GM should have never done it in D&D. He should have taken all of the like flavor and structure from the Strahd module, but he should have done it in Zweihander, because I think that's what he really wanted in the end, was that grim, dark, like, you can and will die, like, Strahd is actually scary. But I also do know that it's hard to run that, like, if you don't have a group who's really dedicated to that, because D&D somehow, at least in my experience, has always gotten silly, like, really, like, quickly, most of the time.
Yeah. With Curse of Strahd, what I've looked up online, I've understood that a lot of people are trying to run the campaign as some kind of darkest Dungeons and Dragons, like very grim dark setting with very difficult fights. Well, that's already in the books and stuff like that. But I've come to the conclusion that it is most enjoyable when it's run as gothic horror action adventure. Minis, I haven't really almost ever been playing with them. I don't have any of my own, but because I went like full to the deep end with this D&D stuff, I set myself virtual machine in Oracle Cloud. It runs me a basically virtualized computer that then runs me a game server where the virtual tabletop software that we use, Foundry, is run 24/7.
Oh, cool.
And I have all sort of things set up there.
That's probably better than the other systems. Like Roll20, I find, has always just been kind of limited in what it can accomplish. So I've never used it. Like for Zweihander, I use the Kingdom Death Monster board and the minis that went to that. But yeah, otherwise, that's mostly just for the sake of like placeholding to visually see the board. But yeah, I don't think like ever with D&D I've played with minis either. Which...
Yeah, I have very limited experience with Roll20. I have used it a little bit, and I felt exactly what you just described. And then we played my Strahd campaign in Fantasy Grounds. And I played another D&D campaign in Fantasy Grounds, and Fantasy Ground was alright. But still, I felt it was limiting the thing that I wanted to do. So I went to the deep end and started using Foundry, which is very super complex and it has a very steep learning curve. But the things that you can do with it are just like, wow.
It does seem like a cool tool, because generally, like, a lot of the tools, like the digital tools for RP systems, usually D&D, they always feel kind of limiting, because anytime there's some like expansion or whatever, like when we were playing Strahd, my cleric was like a night domain cleric, and the night domain spells weren't in the I forget what the app was that we were using to track our spells, but like my night domain spells just weren't in there. And if I can't use the app for all of my spells, then I don't really know why I'm using it at all.
What you mean.
And that's kind of what I feel like is the case with most tools. There's just like, you know, Eberron and this and that, and so many different expansions or modules or whatever that have their own things, and none of the digital tools have all of them.
Right.
So, or they do, but you have to buy them all. And
pen and paper certainly has its advantages.
Yeah.
With my homebrew campaign at the moment, we use Foundry basically only when we have battle maps and stuff. But otherwise, we played very traditionally at the table.
Theater of the mind is, you know, its own kind of special thing. You can really like transport yourself somewhere else with it when you really get in the mood. Well, we talked about now the old system whose name I've already forgotten, D&D, but have you explored much outside of those two systems?
I have this habit that sometimes when I have time, I just get my hands into a random tabletop RPG rule book and like read that through while I drink coffee or something. I have extensively gone through Stormbringer, multiple editions of it, multiples of Warhammer Fantasy RPG systems, also Warhammer 40k, like Wrath and Glory. And I have dabbled with Fate. and some kind of Star Wars RPG. I even played that once, and probably several others.
Like, when you don't know anything about anything, you'd think that D&D is, like, the only TTRPG there is. And then, just, like, through randomly talking to my friends who like TTRPG, I came across the most bizarre stuff. Like, do you know Wendy's, like the fast food restaurant? Yeah. I think they have some sort of system. It's like, it's like a one paper, like, really simple system, but
nice.
I think someone recently sent me a link to some Star Trek related system that I didn't try out but was interesting. And there's all sorts, even like, I think we played one time The Witch is Dead, didn't we?
Yeah, that was excellent.
That's such a fun one, just like the maniacal, which is familiar, is seeking revenge.
Yeah, and the case with that was that the whole rule set fits to one A4 page.
Yes. So I've played that a few times since. I've thrown some of my own flavor, because usually I've played it on holidays. So one of them, I had the bad guy was Mrs. Claus for Christmas, and that's a really fun system. I actually recommend it if you like, even just for like trying out, like testing group chemistry and things like that. These one-shot systems are really good for that, because you can kind of feel out like who's going to be a little bit too much, who's going to be like super distracted, like how did these guys interact with each other before you commit to like a big long campaign.
Right, so. Yeah. I have the pleasure of having players that I have either played long time already or have had some RPG experiences together, like when I have been inviting players to my homebrew campaign. I'm gonna start this same homebrew that I'm already running for a certain group. I'm starting another campaign in that setting when the Curse of Strahd is done. Mostly same players and few new additions.
Nice. I love that, like, anytime I hear about people who have like a group of dedicated players that they've played with forever, I love that, and I get slightly envious just because, again, I'm new to it, so of course I don't have a group of people I've played with forever. But also just like, I love the dedication to the game, that like, if you can still in your 20s or 30s or whatever find time to regularly meet to like actually play a game, it feels near miraculous to me. So
right, that's one of the big reasons why I use the virtual tabletop mostly, because then everybody can attend to the game from their home.
So do you generally just play digitally?
Generally digitally. Okay. I have this one homebrew group where we play live and use the virtual tabletop for battle maps, and so. But virtual tabletop just offers the convenience, because it is indeed very difficult to get a group of 30-something-year-olds together.
Yeah, especially face to face.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I try to do it so that we play regularly, but we don't have very long sessions. They're like max like 4 hours at a time.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think our Zweihander sessions tend to be, I think, maybe like 4 to 5 hours, but it's usually because we end up playing on days where people come after work, so.
Yeah, we do the same, mostly on weekdays.
Yeah.
Like 2, 3, 4 hours. That's something that people generally can do very easily.
Yeah.
And when we play regularly, it also keeps the campaign going on, and people keep remembering what has happened and
keeping
how do their characters work.
Yeah, fresh in the mind definitely helps, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
When it's hard to get people together, you slowly start to think, like, what did actually happen last session? I don't remember.
Yeah. I guess that has happened to everybody at some point.
Probably, yeah.
Even when you listen, like, for example, Critical Role, which I have been doing this year finally, like regularly they don't remember how their stuff works.
So have you found any other actual plays, actually, that you do
I have given some tries to some Call of Cthulhu. stuff from YouTube that I was just browsing and watching while I'm just laying on the bed or something, but it hasn't gone very far. Like, it really takes effort for me to get immersed into stuff. Like, it basically needs to work instantly or it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I tried and failed to like Critical Role so many times.
Yeah, I had a little bit of that with Three Black Halflings, because I love Jasper William Cartwright. Jasper, I think, is the GM, and I started listening to their most recent campaign, and it was good. Like, there's nothing I could complain about it. Like, the characters were interesting, the story was interesting, but for some reason I just never felt that really strong compulsion to keep listening to it.
Right.
And I can't explain why. Like, as I said, like, when I did listen to it, it was good. I had no immediate complaints about like pacing or clarity or anything like that. It was good. But I get that with things that I should like kind of a lot. Like, I felt like I should have liked Black Flag, the series, but kind of same thing. I just was like, yeah, this is subjectively perfectly good entertainment. I just, for some reason, feel no pull to continue watching it.
I've never been big fan of watching TV, and I have watched very few drama series in my life. And most of the ones that I've watched with my wife because she thinks it's a neat idea to watch something together.
Have you stayed up to date on any of the more recent fantasy series, you know, since Game of Thrones, I suppose, would be recent?
Yeah, I've watched, what are there? Well, obviously House of the Dragon, which is great. I watched Witcher and the first season of Rings of Power, which was interesting in many ways. I have much less complaining about it than most of the people who complain about things in the internet.
I will say that, and I apologize to anyone who has watched this multiple times, like this podcast, and my opinion has probably changed. I hated it when I first watched it, but it started to be that kind of like, it's so bad that I kind of like it again.
Right.
That it was like one of those just epic train wrecks that I was just watching with almost delight to see, like, how dumb are they going to make this in the next scene? Like, what stupid cut shot are they going to put in that makes no sense? Or how absolutely awful is Galadriel going to behave and nobody's going to call her out on being this horrible person?
Right, yeah.
And it just somehow came around to being funny. And, like, I would keep watching it. Like, now I'm just morbidly curious to see how it continues. But interestingly enough, House of the Dragon did not keep me.
Really?
Yeah, it was sort of like, when I was first watching, I was like, yeah, this is good. Like, again, this is quality TV. There's nothing inherently wrong about it. But first of all, it's really hard for me to get invested in characters that I don't like. And everyone in that show is
reasonable,
kind of an asshole. And then the other thing was that I felt like it kept jumping in time too quickly, so that I wasn't getting to know characters well enough to like them or get on their team before that big 10-year time jump and the actors all changed, and I was just like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then my third complaint was that I thought that it felt a little bit like it decided that the things that people liked bestest about Game of Thrones was incest, gratuitous violence, and political intrigue. And so they just dialed all of those up to 11 with more dragons in their defense.
Those are all great things.
But I am so tired of bullshit politics in real life that I want my escapism to not be full of bullshit politics.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
I think it reflected the real world too much, of just all of these assholes in power just being assholes in power, and well, everyone else suffers for it. And I was like, this is way too close to the real world. It hurts. I don't want to watch this anymore.
Right, yeah. When I'm writing RPG stuff, when I'm writing my campaign, I aim towards this concept that I call magical fantasy realism, as in like magical realism in literature. Like there are certainly magical elements, magical things are happening, but they are not all over the place all the time. They need to be used sparingly so that they make an impact.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons why I crafted my campaign setting, which is set into a little nation which is mostly populated by humans. Other species and races exist, but they don't come out from the grocery store when you go do your groceries there, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a very important thing to me in general when I'm choosing what kind of fantasy entertainment I'm consuming. It either needs to be really good magic wise, or it needs to be realistic enough that I get into it.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel you on that front. Like, I was a big Final Fantasy nerd growing up, so when I first started creative writing when I was, I don't know, 13 or something, 15, I was just fully ripping off like Final Fantasy. It was all teenagers who band together to save the world, and it just like big cheesy cool shit's happening, and like it just had to be dramatic and awesome.
Right.
And once you've like kind of loosely plotted out like 12 to 13 of those plot lines, they do start to kind of get a little the samey all the time. Like, of course, different skin, but it's always this kind of samey vibe that you go and you fight and you band together and then you get smacked down a whole bunch, but you never stop and you heroically succeed. And it's kind of the same with like the Dragonlance and the Forgotten Realms books, which I never read because it felt like it was all just the same as the video games I was playing. So when I finally got an idea for a new fantasy series, which, shout out to me, I'm going to start publishing on October 4th. The idea was to like tone down the fantastical. Like, I wanted the fantasy setting because fantasy fascinates me. Like, you can do so much with it, you can play so much with it, but I wanted it to just be about people because people are also so interesting. Like, the individual stories that we have in our own lives are interesting, and I wanted people to embrace this feeling that you don't need to save the world to be the hero of your own story. And so it's just honestly really more of like a slice of life story about these two brothers who are, I think, in their late teens, early 20s, and just going about their life. And first thing that happens right away, just something really traumatic happens to one of them, and the rest of the first installment is various repercussions of that.
You have something there like well, I work as a journalist, and like the basic rule of storytelling is that you need to have people in it. Story is not interesting without proper characters.
Yeah. And that's, I think, I just started reading this Joe Abercrombie series. The book is The Blade Itself, and I don't read as much as I would like to. But what immediately got me in this book was this character. This one character who I just, from the initial description of him, I thought was really old. I thought this guy was like 60 to 90, if not possibly older, because he's just so physically crippled. And then after a few chapters, I realized this guy's only like in his 30s. He was just, I think, if I recall correctly, the only person to survive 2 years in a torture chamber, basically. Right. And so his leg is mutilated, and he, like, every step he takes is painful. And they did something horrible to his face where I think they say they took out every other tooth on each side of his mouth so that when he closes his mouth, his teeth never connect to each other, so he can never chew anything. Has to subsist on soup and porridge basically all the time. But he's this guy who has been so defeated yet is still alive that he has this weirdly cheeky, sarcastic sense of humor. But then when he himself has become like a torture artist, I don't exactly know why yet. I'm only about halfway through the book, but I love this character. I don't even know how he's going to be relevant to the overall story yet, but I just immediately felt like this is a character I need to know more about. I need to keep reading about. So, good job, Joe Abercrombie. You hooked me nicely.
I actually recently started reading a fantasy series too that I haven't previously touched. It's called Malazan Book of the Fallen. Oh, do you have it?
I do.
No, there's Death House.
Here
Yeah, Gardens of the Moon.
Gardens
I
of the
recently
Moon.
started reading this book.
That is one of the hardest books I have ever gotten through.
Yeah.
It took me 3 tries over 10 years to get through this book. And I think at some point I got through it just by saying that I was not allowed to read another book that summer until I finished this. And I think once I got halfway through, it started to go a little bit better and it went more smoothly. But I feel like Erickson doesn't describe like almost anything.
Yeah, right.
And so you're just reading and you're like, who is this? What is this? What is happening?
This book starts with this very big list of named characters that are all more or less somehow relevant. And yeah, I got a little bit baffled by it. Like, it explains very little. Like, for example, how does magic works? It just works.
Mm-hmm. And it makes it somehow really confusing to read.
Really confusing.
You don't really know what's going on most of the time for the first half of this book.
But also at the same time, very interesting.
It is. It manages to just, like, nothing really super happens in this book yet, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I read it, I admit. But, like, it seems very much like scene setting for some crazier shit to come. And I do remember just thinking, like, whoa, this is, like, interesting, but also what the hell?
Yeah, I knew that this was going to be a difficult read and I was prepared for it. But there's also, like, a lot of elements that I really like in this. For example, I've talked a lot about realism. Like, how it is very in detail described how the Malazan army is organized and what do they do. So much detail and very deep, like, as far as I've understood, the world building is done with, like, some span of hundreds of thousands of years. A lot of very interesting ideas.
Yeah.
I actually read an essay from this guy about his world building, about this concept of deep time, how in this series there are these people, I don't know how to pronounce their name, but let's call them Tlanimas, who are basically undead Neanderthals, which is very super interesting how they became like that.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that threw me off, is because there's a bunch of different species, I think, of, like, humanoids in there, but he doesn't, like, describe any of them, like, up front, so then it's just like, I don't know, like, someone walks in and then he gives, like, a description and you're like, what is that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Are you a human?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a human from a culture called this. Okay. You guys all look like that.
It's like an entire book of show don't tell.
Yeah, basically.
Like, with, like, no tell. Just absolutely none. And you just gotta figure it out yourself as you go. And I think you do by the end of the book. As I said, like, I think I knew what happened by the end. But it took a little bit of grinding, I feel like, to get there.
Right. Yeah. I believe this whole Malazan thing started out from a D&D campaign.
Oh, nice. I just remember, before I moved to Finland, the guy I was seeing, his brother, was, like, Steven Erikson was his favorite author, so he was the one who told me that I need to read these. And what impressed me is that these books are, like, how many pages? Like, right about 1,000-page books. These are hefty little tomes, and he was popping these out, like, once a year. And of course, this was probably in the context of, why doesn't George R.R. Martin finish his stories? Of course, but it is genuinely impressive that he was able to write like a 1,000-word book in a year, every year for what, like 7 or 8 years or something?
It is impressive, but like I've found out that if you're really immersed into something, you can accomplish quite a lot.
That is true, yeah.
At least that's what I try to think about my own works.
It is true, like, I poke the usual amounts of fun at George R.R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss, but, like, in their defense, I started writing the Vitmar Chronicles in 2008, and I'm only just starting to release it this year, so it's good that nobody knew who I was before, and still nobody knows who I am, I think, but so nobody expects anything from me in that front. Nobody has been sitting for 14 years or whatever waiting for me to actually publish this. And just a little fun tie-in there, but the guy I was dating before I moved to Finland and the brother who introduced me to Steven Erikson were the basis for the two characters in my stories. So the whole series came from this idea of just him and I talking like, what would our lives be like if we were fantasy characters? And then he just made such a cool pitch for his character because he wasn't nice to his character. He made such a cool pitch for it. I was like, God, that would actually be a really good story. And it just stayed in my head for so long that I threw my 13-book Final Fantasy-ish series out, like, on forever hiatus now because I wanted to just write this story that we made up in a random conversation one time.
Right. I got a little hook from what you just said that I started thinking that who do I base my characters on? And then, like, instantly I knew what I was gonna say because whenever I play, like, you know, computer games, like RPG games, that's most of the games that I play. I always make the same character based on my wife. It's always Chrissy the Paladin or Chrissy the Evil Wizard or Chrissy something doing something. It's always a girl with red hair, and the name's always Chrissy.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but...
Well, I don't think she has found it as funny as I have. Yeah, like, I've been playing a little bit of Baldur's Gate. I'm trying to play a little bit of Baldur's Gate. I finished it only already once, and now I'm having a second Chrissy, and this is the Dark Urge Chrissy. So it's a dark Chrissy doing all the maniacal shit.
Incredible.
I think that was the right thing to do.
I think so. There should be more characters out there based off Chrissy.
Yeah.
Actually, Chrissy has not appeared as a character in the Vitmar Chronicles yet. She's too new to me, but she could very easily, I think, be a character.
You should interview her.
I should. She could. She's geek enough.
She has very geek things in her. She has like this huge So, for those who don't know, Chrissy is my wife. She has like huge collection of Magic the Gathering cards, and she has played all the Japanese RPGs that I can name, and so on.
But has she played Baten Kaidos? Which is a GameCube game, which is why people didn't always know about it.
I don't know about it. I doubt she has, but never know.
I just got it on Nintendo Switch because I just remembered that it existed. And it is honestly probably one of the best JRPGs that I've ever played. Insofar as JRPGs drive me bananas, my god, this game has so many good twists in it. Like, I won't spoil anything because it's too good. Like, normally I'll just be like, whatever, you're probably not gonna play it, so here's spoilers. I won't do that. I want everyone to play this game just so they can experience the halfway through the game big twist. Now, just replaying it, and there's such a good story, and the way they kind of unravel it piece by piece by piece is just masterfully done. Again, with a grain of salt to just general tropiness. They do such a good job in this game.
As I mentioned before, I am very picky, and my pickiness comes to the point that I basically don't touch anything that comes from Japan. I have only played Final Fantasy VIII, and I liked it a lot, but anything else, it's not for me really, except everything that comes out from Software. But I would not really call them Japanese RPG games. They are
not.
They are Western RPGs made by Japanese people. Most of my bandmates are really also like somewhat fans of From Software. We have played Dark Souls, all of them, and some of us has played Elden Ring 2, which is super great. And Crimson Sun has a Dark Souls inspired song on our first album. And we have been making some demos that were also like Dark Souls based, but those never saw release.
Now, like, I'm kind of tempted to ask you which song, but I'm also tempted to go see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out.
I'm gonna try.
It is very obvious when you see it.
Okay. Well, I've been meaning to. The one thing that I was sad about when I was reviewing the new album was that I didn't find the time to listen to the last two albums again beforehand, and it's still like kind of in the to-do list in the back of my mind, just because I wanted to. It's a good album, and it sounds the same yet different from the previous albums, which is why I want to go back.
Yeah, I get that.
Listen to the new Crimson Sun album. It's out on the 20th.
Listen to the new Crimson Sun album. Out this Friday, which is 20.
Yes, and I have no idea when I'm going to publish this, so it might already be out by then. Who knows? But one thing I was going to ask about as well, you mentioned The Witcher. So you got the video games and you got the show. And I'm curious...
And the books.
Yes, of course. I think we have Geralt up there with Mr. Dark Souls fighting a griffin.
Yeah.
They're
teaming it up.
Yeah, double teaming that. I think we actually got into a discussion about this, my partner and I, as to who would win in a fight. Is it Cinderborn? I think that guy's from Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, Dark
Geralt.
Souls 3.
I think I can't remember what the conclusion we got to, but I think we decided that the Dark Souls character would probably win in a fight.
I would say so too, because they have this neat little feature that they always come back.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, Geralt can take a hit, but he would still die without his head.
Exactly.
But how have you felt about the show? Because it's been weird, I want to say.
Yeah, it is rather weird, but I've mostly enjoyed it. Like, of course, like, if you set expectations with Game of Thrones, as well, to be honest, like, after Game of Thrones, everybody started making fantasy series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've liked it. Henry Cavill he was doing the acting.
Yeah.
I think he did mostly good job, and
he suited the Geralt.
He suited, and there's many good reaction gifs with him saying,
I can believe that. Like, for a character who is mostly known for just kind of stoically grunting, I think he kind of did a bang-up job of it. And I think I'm hesitant to keep watching without him, because I also don't know if I really like where they're going with it, and so if he didn't like it and left, then I'll probably still give it a shot, but I don't have high hopes, let's say.
Right, yeah. When I'm watching fantasy series like The Witcher, for example, like, I'm trying to be in a mindset that, okay, what I'm gonna see is these people's interpretation of the thing that I have had some previous experience with. I don't own this product, what it is based on. They are not needing to do things as I imagine them to be done.
It's a good perspective to come into it from. I can be one of those people who gets really butthurt over, why did you change this? Because, like, I get that, like, you change stuff to make it more exciting in a visual media, for sure.
Right.
But sometimes I just don't get why. And what they kind of did with, like, the overall season 2 was okay, but what they did with the Witchers specifically in that season, and like killing one of them off, and with the weird beast in their castle and stuff.
that was weird.
And they could have done without that. Like, the rest of the season was fine, but just that arc I didn't get, and I didn't know why it was there, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I had to go, like, search this thing from the internet. So what exactly happened here?
Yeah, I was like, wait, isn't this Witcher still alive in the video game? He's like one of the two that is still left. Why did you kill off? There's not enough Witchers! Don't kill them off needlessly. You might need them in later seasons.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a popular or unpopular opinion, but I think that the best Witcher stuff is in the video games. The books are great, but I think the Witcher, the Wild Hunt, it's just a like masterpiece. It's almost 10 years old now, and it's still a great game. It is great gameplay-wise. It is great narratively. It is beautiful.
It's one of, I think, maybe the best like open world kind of role-playing adventure game of its era, I think, because some people have argued in the favor of like the Divinity games or the new Baldur's Gate, but like, I don't know, there's just something about the Witcher world that like you have these like characters that those other games don't have. They don't have their Geralt. And I think that maybe is part of what really draws you, because people just love Geralt. And you love being this grumpy dude who goes around this just shitstorm world trying his darndest to like do right by people, and no one appreciates him for it, and you sympathize with that. Like, dude who's just trying to do his best and no one appreciates him.
Again,
almost.
This comes to the fact that great characters either make it or break it.
Truly. Like, with all the floweriest writing in the world, it's not the same if you're not following good characters.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, like, the books, they're good. Like, you know, they're the foundation of the whole thing, and I'm sad to say I haven't actually played the first or the second Witcher game. I've kind of been, like, slowly, like, semi-patiently wondering if they're gonna update the first one of these days, because I heard that one was the best. Like,
it was pretty good, yeah. I played most of it. I got this very annoying thing that I got really far into the game and I got stuck, long story short. Like, somehow the game did not work as intended and I was not able to go forward.
Kind of like in Disco Elysium, if you don't find enough room for your hostel.
Yeah.
Or money to pay for your hostel.
Oh, Disco Elysium is great. That's like hands down one of the best RPG games I've ever played. And from all of the places, it comes from our neighbor country, Estonia. Like, very weird world building, very interesting, but not too weird that it gets me like, oh my god, okay, this is too weird stuff. There's furry people walking on the street. Nothing like that.
Yeah, I remember like playing it first and being a little bit like annoyed that like, what, you have like the country of Mesk with its mariettes or something, which is completely Mexico with mariachis. And it was like pissing me off that it was like so close. But then I realized that it gives this kind of weird, trippy feeling of like, is this our world? Well, no. But it's like this weird, blurry, like adjacent, parallel dimension version of our world.
Weird reimagining of our world.
Yeah, and so then I started to like be less annoyed, because I was thinking that this is actually like giving it a weird, trippy effect of like it fills in these kind of like cultural stereotypes without like stereotyping too much, for example, and it's kind of cool actually after a while.
Yeah, and like turning real world concepts around in interesting ways.
Yeah, I think the only thing that bummed me out about it was just that first of all, you couldn't solve the mystery.
The mystery, yeah, that was a...
Like, it would have been nice if it was a solvable mystery, that it wasn't just an Agatha Christie novel, essentially, where it leads... I suppose, like, really, you should consider the game from a perspective of a story as opposed to a murder mystery, because you're not really solving the mystery, you're playing the story of this crazy dude, and it's not about you solving the mystery, it's about, like, how many different ways can you make this poor son of a bitch behave.
Exactly, like, the mystery is just a loose framework there,
yeah, exactly,
where you operate. It's not the main thing, actually.
Yeah, I do just wish there was some little, like, differences in the endings based off of how you played. So, like, let's say, like, if you never followed the cryptid stuff, then you don't find a cryptid at the end. You'd still have the same ending, more or less. You just wouldn't get, like, the full story behind, you know, what was going on.
The cryptid stuff was so beautiful.
I love that.
It was one of the best video game moments.
It was really, like, unexpected and cool. I remember actually just being a little bit like, whoa, I didn't see that coming, and I'm actually impressed.
The soundtrack there is also super great.
And the voice acting.
Yeah.
I guess, like, I played the version that had the voice acting. I guess the original
has some characters have some voice acting.
Oh, like, the Ancient Lizard Brain voice just hooked me right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm an old, like, first video game I ever fell in love with was King's Quest VI. And point-and-click mechanics where you can just get stuff and then do stuff with stuff is, like, to me, like, one of the most fascinating things you can do in a video game. And they've made, like, new King's Quest games, and I don't like them. Somehow, like, point-and-click mechanics and really bad puns were what King's Quest was known for, and the remakes somehow don't capture the magic of it. Like, the jokes aren't as clever or quippy, and the point-and-click things don't work the same as they used to. Like, I remember trying to play one on the PS4, I think, and, like, in order to get all of the trophies, you have to find all the weird stuff you can do, and one of them was, like, drop a squirrel into some purple paint, and I'm like, in what world would I ever think to do, like, to apply squirrel to paint bucket? Like, no! Like, it needs to be sensible somehow. In King's Quest VI, you're trying to get swamp ooze, and so you go to the swamp, and you scoop some swamp ooze, and then there's a stick that's been in the swamp the entire game, that's never done anything, and it looks at you and it goes, "That's not swamp ooze, that's swamp grime!" And then there's a log that also has a face on it that's been there the whole time and not done anything, that just goes, "He's right, you know." And this is a stick in the mud and a bump on a log. And this is what I mean about the clever jokes.
Right.
And they're, you know, like, bitter brothers. And the way you get your swamp ooze is by giving the bump on a log a rotten tomato that you've also been carrying in your inventory for forever at that point. Give it to the bump on the log. He throws it in the face of the stick in the mud. The stick in the mud and the rotten tomato, which is sentient, by the way, both get pissed off, start, like, throwing swamp crap at the bump on a log, and then they all kind of, like, burn out their anger and have a little reconciliation, and then they all take a nap, and you scrape swamp ooze off the bump in the log. And that is your little quest arc there. Just the weirdest shit, but it still made sense in this weird-ass world. And it was just brilliant. I still love that game, and it's weird voice acting, and just, it's so wonderful.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of those games, but they're a little bit before my time.
But I think Disco Elysium was kind of the first one to bring back a little bit of that, like, joy of just, like, stuff! What do I do with the stuff?
Yeah. You find a plastic bag, then you collect bottles, then you return the bottles, and then you spend your money on alcohol and cigarettes.
Exactly.
Just like in real life.
Exactly. So it's a wonderful depiction also of the saddest aspects of real life humanity. That's just the truly saddest character I think I've ever encountered.
Right. Yeah, with Disco Elysium, the cryptid stuff certainly is like one of my most memorable video game moments. There are several, but that's maybe one of the more recent ones.
Hmm. It was just such a cool and unexpected moment, I think, because you have the like cryptid hunters the whole time, and you just kind of think it's just gonna be like this weird thing where you can make fun of these guys or not. And then to have it actually like tie into the story was just so unexpected in such a delightful way.
Dialogue was very good, very well written.
It was.
Overall, that game has very well written dialogue.
Did you ever try out this game called The Messenger?
No, I'm not familiar.
It's really cool. It's like this story of like kind of one of these like loop things where you're playing this ninja who has to get a message to some village to warn them of the incoming demon attack or something. But you encounter these kind of like space-time rifts as well, where this like sarcastic dude in a cloak gives you advice and helps you level up and things like that, and I think you can usually save near him as well or something. But what I love about it is like the cheeky dialogue that they put in, and you know, cheeky dialogue when done right is just such a great thing.
Delicious.
And so, you know, like how in a lot of video games there'll be like a cupboard, and so in this guy's room there's a cupboard, and you go and you try and look in the cupboard, and he keeps telling you to stop fucking around with my cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep clicking, he starts to like go meta level, and he starts warning you like, if you don't stop touching my cupboard, I'm gonna go on a real long rant, and you're gonna have to sit back, and you're not gonna be allowed to like fast click through me talking. You're just gonna have to listen to this. And then if you keep going, then this weird dude in his cloak that doesn't have like a face or anything will go on a long philosophical rant about something really interesting. The twist to the story was really good, but one of the coolest things as well was that they did this thing with the design where the first half of the game is in 8-bit and then the second half is in 16-bit.
Oh.
But they did it with the music too. So you go through these like, I don't know, like time rifts or whatever, and it moves the whole game forward in time, but also stylistically forward in time as well. So there's like more pixels in the graphic, more like sound bites in the music and everything, and it's such a cool effect. I really love it. Sabotage Studios?
I also have a recommendation for you. I played this game last winter. Winter is usually the time when I play video games. Apparently, this game is somewhat old. It is based on a Skyrim mod that was very popular, and I can see why. It's called The Forgotten City. It was a very little game. It took me maybe like 10-20 hours to play through. And the concept is approximately so that you end up in this closed city where Romans live. And the catch is that somebody is gonna commit a crime. And when somebody commits a crime, the world ends. But you, as a player, can go back in time to the beginning of the day, retaining the knowledge that you have managed to gather before the crime was committed and the items you have found and stuff like that. And you need to figure out what is this whole shit show about.
I do like games generally that do that. So
it was really well done and really interesting and really satisfying ending.
Nice. I'm gonna have to put that on my list. I think I love games like I play a lot of roguelites just because they're easy to kind of pick up and put down in that sort of busy 30+ adult life that we have these days. So I play a lot of them when I just want a casual game like Enter the Gungeon. Very silly game. I do recommend it. Or Crypt of the Necrodancer, also very silly game that I recommend.
I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's, again, like I like games that have dumb puns, and that game has the most. Like once you beat it, they go and they show you all of the enemy names, and they all have dumb pun names like Freddy Merchantry, and
Yeah.
like it's all like music puns with, you know, dungeon crawling puns. So it's great.
There's one roguelike game that I've been playing probably more than 20 years now, and I still haven't finished it because there's permadeath and things. It is rather difficult. It's called Ancient Domains of Mystery. Adam, in short, was originally done like with this ASCII graphics,
Nice.
like much like NetHack or some similar games. They have some recently made a new version of it to Steam. Yeah, it is super difficult. I have tried 20 years, but I still haven't finished it. And still, like, every once in a while, couple times per year, I get this itch to play it again.
So do you think you will ever finish it?
I think I will. I am this close to finishing it. And of course, there's like multiple different endings that you can achieve, and some are more difficult and some not.
I think Dead Cells got a little out of my hands after a while. That was one of, I think, our household favorite roguelites from recent years, because I think all of the DLCs, like if you buy the like full package, like anytime they have a DLC, they might include it. I'm not sure. It's also, I haven't played it in a couple years now, so I'm probably behind on my info. But I loved that, like, it progresses really nicely. It gives you like a billion things to pick from for your run and different enemies, and then the difficulty levels are crazy, so you have these big jumps and you got to get good if you want to go up to higher difficulty levels. And eventually I think I kind of stopped playing because it started to get a little too hard for me, because you know, I've played through the main like base storyline, but of course you don't get the final ending until you do it on the hardest level, and I was just like, man, I don't know if I'm ever gonna get there, because whoo, does it start getting hard after a while. And I am legendary for being a very impatient gamer. So.
In Ancient Domains of Mystery, there are so many different ways to die. First of all, a very common one, you can die of starvation if you don't eat. Then, if you walk on ice and happen to carry too much weight with you, the ice just breaks, and if you don't know how to swim, you drown. And when you're in the dungeon and there are stairs going up or down to a next level of dungeon, if you kick the stairs long enough, they will break and the whole dungeon crumbles on you and you die.
Of course.
Yeah, of course, like natural thing to do.
Yes. Why would that not be
You can
included?
encounter a banshee, and banshee scream insta-kills you unless you have put beeswax to your ears, so that you're deaf.
Of course. That, like, sounds like it kind of has the appeal of the, like, point and click, like, how do I get through this thing, but also, like, you would need just such an amount of repetition.
Endless amount of repetition. When I was kid, like 10 years old, when I played that, first of all, it was all in English. I did not understand everything very well. And it was like so old-fashioned game with this symbol-based graphics and everything, that things were difficult to do. It took me quite a while before I figured out that the game starts in wilderness, where you can go to these different locations. It took me quite a long time before I figured how to enter any of those locations. And we still had fun playing it. Just being in the wilderness and eventually dying to the wolves.
I kind of remember this, like, similar thing, that when I first got Final Fantasy IX, right when I got it, like, I found out about Final Fantasy because I think I was watching, like, animated music videos, and I was looking for Iced Earth music videos, and they didn't really have music videos back then, but someone made an AMV for the Dark Saga to Final Fantasy IX, and I was just like, what is this? I need whatever this is in my life, like, right now. And so my first love gave me his old PS1 and Final Fantasy IX because he had played it, and it was his favorite video game. So, of course, you know,
Naturally.
first loves and favorite video games. but I didn't have a memory card. That was the only thing.
Oh.
So I was just replaying the beginning of the game over and over and over again, like getting, I think, as far as the forest level that is like right when you leave the first area. Like I think I would die in there somewhere, but I'd just be like, damn it, no saves. I just get to start over and play it again, and just little teenage me just, this is so cool, I don't know how to handle it. And then if you go read all of like my old stories, so ripped off from that game. And Final Fantasy in general, but
I have somewhat similar experience with Final Fantasy VIII. I had a memory card and I progressed quite far in the game until I saved something else on top of that save by accident. And then I did it twice.
No.
Those were the times.
One weird thing about me in gaming is that I'm really bad at learning mechanics, especially in Final Fantasy games. So with Final Fantasy VIII, I didn't learn the mechanics at all. All I did was at the beginning of the game, I took Ifrit and Shiva and I went to the beach and I leveled them up to level 10 right then and there. And then for the rest of the game, I just used Ifrit and Shiva to absolutely fuck slam everyone down. And then you get to the, like, Sorceress Adele fight in the end, where anything that does, like, area of effect damage will kill Renoir, I hear is how you're supposed to pronounce her name.
Oh, that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I was a Renoa person, of course, but I recently heard it's supposed to be like quinoa, so whatever. But, you know, she's like in the sorceress's chest, and all of my summons were just murdering her. And so I was lucky that I had a save from disc 3, because that's where disc 4 goes, and no opportunity anywhere to do anything about it. So I just had to, like, okay, we're going to the islands closest to heaven and hell, and we are grinding for many hours to draw all of the magic so I can beat this boss, because all of my characters are useless.
I played Final Fantasy VIII, like the first disc through last winter, just because I felt like trying it again. How does it feel? It was pretty alright, satisfying, but didn't feel like progressing further.
I can see that. Like, I understand the haters for Final Fantasy VIII, but I also understand the people who love it. It has its high points and its low points, but it's a good one. So
I don't have much emotional attachment to it, nor any other Final Fantasy games, because I haven't played them. So, like, I can't really participate in the debate on what's the best Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I used to be like, one of the nerdy things I did as a kid was spending a lot of time on the IGN forums for the Final Fantasy lovers out there. And, yeah, I still have a friend, actually, from those forums that's been with me since I was like 15 years old. And he actually listens to this podcast, I think. So, hey, Mikey, what's up? If you're listening again. But now, what time is it? We've been talking for quite a while.
So, it is time.
It's time. Well, since, you do have an album coming out, would you like to say anything about your new Crimson Sun album that's coming on the 20th?
Yes, absolutely. The new Crimson Sun album, Sorrow Breaker, is the best Crimson Sun album done thus far. And you should all listen to it. That's what I gotta say.
What's your favorite song?
The title song, Sorrow Breaker.
It's a good one, but I haven't picked favorites myself yet, actually. All I know is that Sailing Home just really has been in my head a lot. It's running on like 3 days now, I think, just constantly playing in the back of my head.
Sailing Home is one of those songs on which me and Chrissy have done the lyrics together. We just sat down and decided that, okay, we're going to write a story. It's going to be a maritime story. And there it is.
I love it. And I think I saw, I think it was Chrissy posting on socials, what the song meant to her compared to what it meant to you. And I loved seeing, how similar and different they were at the same time.
Yeah, she had this very, very long idea about what it means and how are things representing different things, and I'm just like, well, it's a boat story.
So for all your love of deep stories.
Yeah, there it is. Just a boat story.
Incredible.
But that's the beauty of creative things in general, music, literature, and stuff. Yeah. People can put on their own interpretations.
Yes, and I think that's kind of like the magic of art.
Exactly.
That you write something that means a certain thing to you or comes from a certain experience you had, and then people with completely different experiences further relate to it. And
exactly.
That's magic.
That's the magic.
And then you go on to come up with your own stuff and create your own art and all of that good. The circle of art is a magical thing, and do art.
With these words, I thank you very much. It was pleasant.
Thank you for coming. We've been waiting too long to do this.
Yeah, I'll come again. Bye.